Hi everyone, welcome back to Windows Server 2016. Active Directory domains and trusts. This tool is generally only used in larger environments that have more than one domain within the same network. A company may utilize multiple domains in order to segregate resources or services, or for better organizational structure of their servers, names and namespaces within the company. There is also another tier in the hierarchical structure of Active Directory that we haven't talked about, and that's called a forest. The forest is basically the top level of your Active Directory structure with domains and subdomains coming in under that forest umbrellas. Another way to think of the forest is the boundary of your AD structure. If you have multiple domains beneath a single forest, it does not necessarily mean that the domains trust each other. So users from one domain may or may not have permissions to access resources on one of the other domains, basically based on the level of trust that exists between those domains. When you have a domain and are adding child domains under it, there are trusts placed automatically between those domains. But if you have a need to merge some domains together in a way other than the default permissions, Active Directory domains and trust is the management tool you use in order to establish and modify those trust permissions. Growing organizations often find themselves in a position where they need to regularly manage domain trusts as a result of business acquisitions. If Consoto, whatever, acquires Fabricam and both companies have fully functional domain environments, it is often advantageous to work through an extended migration process in bringing the Fabricam employees over to Contoto's Active Directory rather than suffer all the loss associated with simply turning off Fabricam's network. So for a certain period of time, you would want to run both domains simultaneously and could establish a trust between those domains in order to make that possible. Active Directory sites and services. Sites and services is another tool that is generally only employed by companies with larger Active Directory infrastructures, as is the case with any server. If having one domain controller is good, then having two domain controllers is even better. The larger your network grows, so does your Active Directory infrastructure. But before you know it, you will be looking into setting up servers in a second location, then in a third, and so on. In a domain-centric network, having domain controllers in each significant site is a general practice, and you could soon be looking at dozens of domain controller servers running in your network. Turning on new domain controllers and joining them to your existing domain so that they start servicing users and computers is pretty easy. The harder part is keeping all of the traffic organized and flowing when you want it to. If you have a primary data center where the majority of your servers are located, you probably have multiple DCs on site in that data center. In fact, in order to make your AD highly available, it is essential that you have at least two domain controllers. Then you build a new office that is significantly sized where it makes sense to install a local DC in that office also, so that the computers in that office aren't reaching over the wide area network WAN in order to authenticate all the time. If you were to spin up a server in the new office and turn it into a domain controller for your network, it would immediately start working. The problem is that the client computers aren't always smart enough to know which DC they need to talk to. You may now have computers in the remote office that are still authenticating back to the main data centers, DCs. Even worse, you probably also have computers in the main office that are now reaching over the WAN to authenticate with the new DC that is in the remote office, even though there are DCs right on the local network with them. This is the situation where Active Directory sites and services become essential. In here, you build out your different physical sites and assign the domain controllers to these sites. Domain joined users and computers within this network now follow the rules that you have put in place via sites and services, so that they are always talking to and communicating and authenticating from their local domain controlled servers. This saves time as the connections are faster and more efficient, and it also saves unnecessary bandwidth and data consumption on the WAN, which often saves you dollars. Here's a quick look into Active Directory sites and services. There is a good chance you will have to make use of this tool someday if you are a part of a growing organization. Active Directory Administration Center. While the tools we have looked at so far are critical to understand and be familiar with in order to manage Active Directory, you can tell that their aesthetics are a bit dated. The Active Directory Administrative Center, on the other hand, has a much more streamlined interface that looks and feels like Server Manager that we are all becoming more and more comfortable with. Many of the functions available within the ADAC accomplish the same things that we can do through the other tools already, but it pulls these functions into a more structured interface that brings some of the most commonly utilized functions up to the surface and makes them easier to run. One great example is right on the landing page of ADAC. A common help desk task in any network is the resetting of passwords for user accounts. Whether the user forgot their password, changed it recently and mistyped it, or if you are resetting a password during some other sort of troubleshooting. Resetting a password for a user account typically involves numerous mouse clicks in order to get the job done. Now there is a quick link called Password Reset shown right here on the main page of the Active Directory Administration Center. Also useful is, sorry, forgot where I was. Also useful is the global search feature right next to it, where you can type in anything to the search field and it will scour your entire directory for results relating to your search. This is another common task in AD that previously required multiple clicks to accomplish. If you click on the name of your domain in the left navigation tree, you will dive a little deeper into the capabilities of ADAC. As you can see, the information listed here is being pulled from Active Directory and looks like the same information you would see in AD users and computers. That is correct, except instead of having to right click for every function like new user creations or searches, you now have some quick tasks available on the right that can quickly launch you into accomplishing these functions. Also interesting are the links for raising the forest or domain function level on the screen. In order to do this using the classic tools, I see most domains accomplish this by launching AD domains and trusts. So one of the big benefits of the newer ADAC tool is that it is capable of giving you a centralized management window from which you can accomplish tasks that would normally have taken multiple windows and management consoles. Do you sense a common theme throughout Windows Server 2016 with the centralized management of everything? Dynamic access control. In addition to teaching old dogs new tricks, the Active Directory Administration Center also brings some new functionality to the table that is not available anywhere in the classic tool. If you once again take a look at the tree to the left, you will see that the next section in the list is Dynamic Access Control, DAC. This is a technology that is all about security and governance of your files, the company data that you need to hold onto tightly and make sure it's not falling into the wrong hands. DAC gives you the ability to tag files, thereby classifying them for particular groups or users. Then you can create access control policies that define who has access to these particular tagged files. Another powerful feature of dynamic access control is the reporting functionality. Once DAC is established and running in your environment, you can do reporting and forensics on your files, like finding a list of the people who have recently accessed a classified document. DAC can also be used to modify a user's permissions based on what kind of device they are currently using. If our user Susie logs in with her company desktop on the network, she should have access to those sensitive HR files. On the other hand, if she brings her personal laptop into the office and connects it to the network, even when providing her domain user credentials, we might not allow access to these same files simply because we do not own the security over the laptop. These kinds of distinctions can be made using the dynamic access control policies. Read-only domain controllers. We can't wrap up our overview of the important Active Directory tools and components without mentioning read-only domain controllers, RODC. Typically, when installing new domain controllers to your network, you add the role in a way that makes them a regular, writable, fully functional DC on your network so that it can perform all aspects of that DC role. There are also some circumstances in which this is not the best way to go, and that is what the RODC is here to help with. This is not a separate role, but rather a different configuration of the same ADDS role that you will see when spinning through the wizard screens during the configuration of your new domain controller. An RODC is a specialized domain controller to which you cannot write new data. It contains cached, read-only, copy of only certain parts of the directory. You can tell an RODC to keep a copy of all the credentials within your domain, or you can even tell it to only keep a list of selective credentials that are going to be important to that particular RODC. Reasons for using an RODC: branch offices and DMCs are the most common I see. If you have a smaller branch office with a smaller number of people, it may be beneficial for them to have a local domain controller so that their login processing is fast and efficient. But because you don't have a good handle on security in that little office, you would rather not have a full-blown DC, which someone might walk away with. This could be a good utilization for RODC. Another is within a secure DMZ network. These are perimeter networks typically designed for very limited access because they are touching the public internet. Some of your servers and services sitting inside the DMZ network might need access to Active Directory, but you don't want to open up a communications channel from the DMZ to a full domain controller in your network. You could stand up an RODC inside the DMZ, have a cache the information that it needs in order to service those particular servers in the DMZ and make much more secure domain or subdomain environment within that network. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. And if you like listening, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you.